Hello, welcome to Dr. Sam's Anatomy classes. Myself, Dr. Azmi Mohsin, Professor of Anatomy. This presentation I have made is for your self-assessment of your knowledge of muscles of gluteal region. So those who have already studied about the muscles of the gluteal region will enjoy giving this test. So let me tell you, this test there are around 11 slides. There are 11 slides and each slide has an image and a question attached to it. You'll be given 30 seconds to visualize the image, read the questions and memorize the answers in first 30 seconds. Then after that I will explain you the answers. Okay, so if you're ready, let's begin. Identify the muscle, its action and nerve supply. Alright, this muscle is gluteus maximus. This is the largest muscle of the body. This is one of the most powerful muscle of the body. This is also very powerful anti-gravity muscle. Okay, and it is this muscle on which you sit. So about the origin of this muscle, although not indicated, let me tell you that it arises from the posterior 1/3 of the outer surface of the iliac crest. Then also arises from the gluteal surface, that is the outer surface of the ilium behind the posterior gluteal line. It also takes origin from the lateral surface of the dorsal aspect of the sacrum and coccyx, and it also takes origin from the ligament, broad ligament underlying, that is sacrotuberous ligament, from the outer surface of the sacrotuberous ligament. So it is a wide origin. Okay, so then this muscle, the fibers, you can see the direction, they're descending downwards and laterally, right, this, and they get inserted, the deeper fibers, they get inserted onto the gluteal tuberosity here on the posterior surface of the greater trochanter or femur, while the maximum fibers, the superficial fibers, they get inserted onto the iliotibial tract, that is the thickening of the fascia lata on the lateral side of the thigh. So that's how there's insertion of this muscle. And now the action about this, I told you it's an anti-gravity, right? So it is a powerful extensor of the hip joint. This muscle helps you to stand up from the squatting position. So it elevates your body against the gravity. One action is extension of hip joint. Then another action also is a powerful action, and that is the lateral rotation of the thighs, right? You can see the direction of fibers, how they are winding from back, they're reaching down there laterally. So it also is the lateral rotator of the thigh. And don't forget that when it's superficial fibers, they were inserting here onto the iliotibial tract, and which is a laterally running tract in the thigh, right? So with the help, and which reaches to the tibia, right? So through those fibers to the iliotibial tract, it also helps to maintain your position of body in a semi-flexed knee against gravity. And you know that semi-flexed knee is a unlocked knee and an unstable position, but this muscle helps you maintain your position in an anti-gravity way along with another muscle attached to iliotibial tract, and that is tensor fasciolati. Okay, I'll tell you again when I'll talk about the other muscle. Now these are the actions of this muscle. And the nerve supply, there is inferior gluteal nerve, and inferior gluteal nerve is L5, S1, S2 dorsal division. Okay, identify the muscle, its action and nerve supply. Okay, so you have seen this muscle. This muscle is taking origin from the inside of the pelvis, right? So from the inside of the pelvis, you can see that it is taking origin from the margins of the obturator foramen, from the inner surface of the obturator membrane, and it is also taking origin from the inner surface of the acetabulum. And you know that acetabulum is formed by the fusion of ilium, ischium and pubis in the ratio of 2:2:1, 2/5 by ilium, 2/5 by ischium and 1/5 by pubis. That's how the three bones fuse to form acetabulum. So from the inner surface of acetabulum it's taking origin. That means this muscle takes origin from all the three bones of the hip bone, ilium, ischium and pubis. Okay. So other ways you can say is that this muscle forms the lateral wall of the birth canal, or lateral wall of the true pelvis, or you can say that it forms the lateral wall of the ischial fossa. Okay, so now about these fibers, you can see the fibers, they're running backwards and laterally, and they emerge out here from the lesser sciatic notch. So this muscle, when it emerges from the lesser sciatic notch, it becomes tendinous. And when it emerges from the lesser sciatic notch, its tendon is accompanied by two small fleshy bellies of muscles from running along its upper and lower borders, and they're called gemellus. So together the three muscle, obturator, internus, superior and inferior gemellus, the three muscles, they insert, you can see that they insert here into the intertrochanteric fossa, but peripherally in the intertrochanteric fossa. Okay, so the action of this muscle will be lateral rotation of the thigh. Okay, the nerve supply for this muscle is nerve to obturator internus, and that is L4, nerve to obturator internus is L5 S1 S2 ventral division. Identify this muscle, its action and nerve supply. Okay, so you are seeing that this is another muscle which is also taking origin from inside the pelvis. Now this is taking from the posterolateral surface of the pelvis, and it takes origin from the either side of the sacrum, the two lateral side of the sacrum on its pelvic surface. From the body is the middle three sacral pieces, that is S2, S3 and S4. So this muscle has an E-shaped origin from both the sides, right? And this muscle, then it fibers, you can see they're descending downwards and laterally, and it emerges through the greater sciatic notch. And when it emerges through the greater sciatic notch, it also receives few fibers from the posterior-inferior iliac spine, posterior inferior iliac spine. So these fibers, they descend downwards laterally, and they insert here, you can see, is on the tip of the greater trochanter of femur. This muscle is called the key muscle of the gluteal region. Why? Because it's for your convenience, it helps to remember the structures passing from above and below the piriformis to the gluteal region. From this greater sciatic notch or greater sciatic foramen, there are structures emerging above and below to this, that I'll not go into it right now. So you know that this is how the piriformis arises and inserts. The action of this muscle is very easy. I'll tell you, the muscles of the gluteal region, the actions are very easy, except a few muscles, the rest of them are very easy. They are maximally, they are all lateral rotators of the thigh. So this piriformis also is the lateral rotator of the thigh. And the nerve supply to this muscle is from the sacral plexus, and that is S1, S2 ventral division, the two nerves from the anterior division of these S1, S2, they join to form this nerve to piriformis. and innervate this muscle. Sometimes occasionally L5 also contributes to innervate this muscle. Okay, then identify the muscle, its action and nerve supply. Okay, so you've seen that this muscle is taking origin from the gluteal surface of the hip bone, that is the outer surface of the ilium. But you can also see very well that it is not taking from the entire surface of the ilium, rather it leaves a space below, for another muscle to arise below to this, right? So this muscle takes origin from the and between the anterior and posterior gluteal lines on the outer surface of the hip bone, and the fibers, you can see they're descending downwards and laterally, and they all insert here on the posterolateral surface of impression on the greater trochanter of femur. Okay, so the action of this muscle is not similar to that of maximus. It's a different muscle, orientation of the muscle is different. So remember, this muscle is a powerful abductor of the hip joint, and it's this muscle which helps you in walking and running and maintaining your balance of the pelvis, right? So this is an abductor of the hip joint. Apart from that, you know, this what it's doing this action is along with another muscle deep to it, and that is gluteus minimus. Together, two muscles, they are abductors of the hip joint, and the two muscles together are also medial rotators of the hip joint, right? And also the secondary action is also they are weak flexors of the hip joint, basically abductors and medial rotators, and secondarily they may also help in flexion of the hip joint. Got it? And the nerve supply to this is superior gluteal nerve, and superior gluteal nerve is L4, L5, S1 dorsal division. Identify the muscle, its action and nerve supply. Okay, so these colored muscles you are seeing here, they're numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are the muscles under the cover of gluteus maximus. So when you reflect the muscle, you'll find these muscles down below. And in the question we've been asked about the second muscle. So you've seen that you have been told about this third muscle, that is obturator internus. And you've also been told about the first muscle, that is piriformis, and I told you that this obturator internus is accompanied by two muscles, number 2 and number 4. These are superior and inferior gemellus. So superior and inferior gemellus okay, and they are together, the three muscles, they insert in peripherally into the intertrochanteric fossa. And the sixth muscle down below here, it is Quadratus femoris. That is a different muscle, I'll tell you later. So this muscle here, let me tell you that this muscle arises, superior gemellus arises from the outer surface of the ischial spine, right? And if somebody asks what arises from the inner surface of the ischial spine, then your answer should be coccygeus and the posteriormost fibers of levator and eye. But on the outer surface, it's origin of superior gemellus. So it inserts into the peripheral portion of the intertrochanteric fossa, and the action will obviously, it will also be the lateral rotator of the hip joint, and the nerve supply to this will be the same which supplies this obturator internus, that is nerve to obturator internus also supplies superior gemellus, and that nerve is L5 S1 S2 ventral division. Identify the muscle, its action and nerve supply. Okay, so you are seeing that this muscle also is arising from the outer surface of the hip bone, right? That's a gluteal surface of the ilium, and it's taking origin between the anterior and inferior gluteal lines, right? So let me tell you, this muscle is gluteus minimus, and important point about it is that the name is minimus, but among the three glutei, it's this muscle which has the widest origin from the outer surface of the hip bone. Okay, so the muscle is more in the anterior half in the coronal plane from the greater trochanter. So you can imagine that the fibers for this muscle, they descend downwards and slightly backwards to insert onto the anterolateral impression on the greater trochanter of femur. So the action, I told you, it is completely, and before that let me tell you that there's a muscle which overlaps this muscle is gluteus medius. So together two muscles, they are gluteus medius as well as gluteus minimus, they are powerful abductors of the hip joint. It prevents your tilting of the hip while you elevate the opposite leg off the ground. So this muscle, the two muscles together help you balance your pelvis while you walk or you run. Okay, so that's the action, powerful abduction. Now another action will be same, that is also will be medial rotator of the thigh, and secondary action will also be helping in flexion of the thigh. Okay, and the nerve supply is superior gluteal nerve, that is L5 S1 S. Superior gluteal nerve is L4 L5 S1 dorsal division. Okay, identify the muscle, its action and nerve supply. Okay, so you can see that this muscle is arising from the ischium anterior to the ischial tuberosity from the anterior surface of the body of ischium anterior to the ischial tuberosity, and this muscle you can see is quadrangular in shape, right? So it takes origin from the ischium and inserts, you can see here that it inserts on the posterior aspect of the greater trochanter of femur, and that's a tubercle called quadritubercle onto which this muscle gets inserted. This muscle is Quadratus femoris, and the action will be same, that is lateral rotation of the thigh. So all the muscles including gluteal maximus and the muscles under the cover of gluteal maximus, they are all lateral rotators of the thigh. And the nerve for this muscle is nerve to quadratus femoris. It has a nerve of its name, although it will be a misnomer because the same nerve will supply inferior gemellus as well. Similarly, nerve to obturator internus also is a misnomer because it supplies superior gemellus, right? So, and remember the superior, that's like, thing very important to remember, that superior gemellus and obturator internus are superiorly placed, although the root numbers are from the lower segments. That is, nerve to obturator internus is from L5 S1 S2 ventral division, while nerve to Quadratus femoris is L4 L5 S1 ventral division. Okay, remember this. Okay. Identify the muscle, its action and nerve supply. Okay, so you can see that this muscle is taking origin from the anterior surface of the obturator foramen, that is the outer surface of the obturator membrane, as well as from the margins of the obturator foramen. Okay, so you can see that this muscle leaves a small space, and that is the actual obturator foramen. Rest of the obturator foramen is actually obliterated by the obturator membrane as well as the two muscles inside and outside. So obturator foramen in life is very small, and that provides passage for the obturator nerves and vessels. Anyway, so you can see that this obturator, this muscle is arising from outside, so this muscle is obturator externus, right? So this muscle is taking origin from pubis, right? And muscles arising from pubis are actually, controlling the medial compartment of the thigh, and they form a medial compartment. They're adductors, and they are all innervated by the obturator nerve. So because developmentally, topographically it belongs to the medial compartment, so its nerve supply will be obturator nerve. But you can see that the muscle fibers, it's winding backwards and laterally, and one more thing, you can see it passes below to the neck of femur. It's passing below to the neck of femur to reach back into the posterior, medially directed concavity on the upper end of femur, that is called intertrochanteric fossa. So important is that this muscle will be inserted deeply into the intertrochanteric fossa. There were three muscles which were inserted peripherally in the intertrochanteric fossa. Those were obturator internus and the two gemellus. But obturator externus inserts deeply into the intertrochanteric fossa. So the action of this muscle, again very easy, it will also be the lateral, it will also cause the lateral rotation of the thigh. Okay, so both the obturators, externus and internus, they both are lateral rotators of the thigh. But an additional action you can see here, because of its direction of fibers, it also prevents inferior dislocation of the hip joint. Got it? So the nerve supply to this is also very interesting, that this obturator nerve, obturator nerve emerges opposite to femoral nerve, that is L2, L3, L4 ventral division, right? So this nerve when runs within the pelvis and it emerges to the obturator foramen, the moment this nerve emerges out from the obturator foramen, it divides. At that point, when it emerges from the obturator foramen, soon that obturator nerve divides into anterior and posterior divisions. The posterior division of obturator nerve pierces obturator externus, innervates this muscle, and then descends down behind adductor brevis, while the anterior division emerges out to the foramen down and descends anterior to adductor brevis. So adductor brevis, just like remember piriformis was the key muscle of the gluteal region. That was for you to remember the structure. Similarly, in the adductor compartment, adductor brevis is a key muscle, because this way you can remember that there are two divisions of obturator nerve, anterior and posterior divisions. They are descending anterior and posterior to adductor brevis. Okay, so this muscle is innervated by the posterior division of obturator nerve, and that is L2, L3, L4 ventral division. Okay, in the same diagram you've already seen, you have to identify the muscle number 4, its action and nerve supply. Again, these are the muscles under the cover of gluteus maximus. Number 1, is piriformis. Number 2 is superior gemellus. Number 3 is obturator internus. Number 4 is inferior gemellus. Number 5 is this. Actually, 5 is this. Yes, 5. They have actually, 5. They have not properly mentioned. Actually, 5 will be running, down to this, and that is obturator externus, which winds below to the neck of femur. And 6th one they have mentioned is quadratus femoris. So all these muscles, you can include obturator externus also, and all these muscles, they act in the gluteal region, right? So they are all lateral rotators of the thigh. So you can imagine how much important is the lateral rotation of thigh. Anyways, so the action you have known is inferior gemellus. Let me tell you about this origin, right? So this is lesser sciatic notch from where tendon of obturator internus was emerging, and from the ischial spine outer surface superior gemellus, from the lesser of the inferior end of the lesser sciatic notch, there is this on outer surface the origin of inferior gemellus, right? So together the three muscles, obturator internus and the two gemellus, they are all inserted peripherally in the intertrochanteric fossa. The interesting thing about obturator internus, let me tell you, because this muscle becomes tendinous when it emerges out, obturator internus. As you know, there are few structures which emerge from the greater sciatic notch below the piriformis, and they appear in the gluteal region for a very short duration, and they soon go back into the pelvis through the lesser sciatic notch. And these structures are nerve to obturator internus, then pudendal nerve and internal pudendal vessels. Got it? So the question is, this nerve to obturator internus, why is it going back? Right, they have already, it is already emerged out from the greater sciatic foramen, then it winds and goes back. So because remember, this muscle is tendinous here, and furthermore there is a pelvic diaphragm inside. So within the pelvis it supplies the upper portion of obturator internus, because the muscle is tendinous outside, so that's why it goes back into the below the pelvic diaphragm to innervate the lower portion of obturator internus, forming the lateral wall of the ischial fossa. So this was about the obturator internus. We are focusing about the inferior gemellus, right? And as I told you, the nerve to inferior gemellus is innervated by the same nerve, that is nerve to quadratus femoris, right? And nerve to quadratus femoris supplies two muscles, inferior gemellus as well as quadratus femoris, and its root number is L4, L5, S1, ventral division. And this nerve also is misnomer. Okay, identify the muscle, its action and nerve supply. Okay, so the green colored muscle here is tensor fasciae lati. Look here now. This is iliac crest from the ASIS along the outer border of the iliac crest up till the iliac tubercle. That's around 5 centimeters from ASIS up till the iliac tubercle on its outer surface. It provides origin to this muscle called tensor fasciae lati. This tensor fasciae lati, this muscle is invested by the deep fascia. Similar was a muscle from below the clavicle, if you remember. Subclavius was also similarly, invested by a muscle on both surface. So similar, that was clavipectoral fascia, if you remember how subclavius was inserted. Similarly, it's here, this is fascia lata, the fascia of the thigh, which splits to enclose this muscle tensor fasciae lati. Then this continues, this thickening of the fascia lata on the lateral side of the thigh. That's called iliotibial tract, and through this iliotibial tract you can say it is inserted here. You can see on the anterior surface of the lateral condyle of tibia. Okay, so this is about origin and insertion of the muscle. Now about its action. To explain you about this action, as I already have little bit told you about while I was telling you about the gluteus maximus, because remember the most of the superficial fibers of gluteus maximus, they're inserted here on the posterior surface of the iliotibial tract, and from the anterior and superiorly it's this tensor fasciae lati. So you can say that this muscle actually comes into role when you are like picking up something which is fallen in the ground. So you try to flex your hip and your knee to reach your hand to the ground, and in that position if somebody commands you to become a statue, so in that position you have to maintain your body weight against gravity. And don't forget that the knee joint in a semi-flexed state is very unstable, it's unlocked. So to maintain your semi-flexed hip and knee, and to maintain the posture, it is this iliotibial tract which has a role, right? So to remember the actions of tensor fasciae lati, it will be very easy if you remember the actions of gluteus maximus, and you just have to antagonize those actions, right? So remember, gluteus maximus was pulling it behind, was causing lateral rotation of the thigh. So this muscle will be pulling it on the medial side, so it will cause medial rotation of the thigh, right? Just like gluteus medius and minimus, tensor fasciae lati will also cause medial rotation of the thigh. Then because gluteus maximus was a powerful extensor of the hip joint, this muscle, as I told you about medius and minimus, gluteus medius minimus, they were also secondarily also helping in flexion of the hip joint. So this also the muscle will also help in flexion of the hip joint. Then both the muscles through the iliotibial tract are reaching or crossing the knee transverse crease of the knee joint and descending down to the bone on below to the knee joint is called tibia, lateral condyle anterior surface. So as I told you that gluteus maximus through iliotibial tract will also try to flex the knee joint, just like the hamstrings, while tensor fasciae lati through its iliotibial tract will try to extend the knee joint. Got it? So you have seen that all the three actions of gluteus maximus are being opposed by tensor fasciae lati, but this is happening in a semi-flexed hip and a semi-flexed knee position. Got it? So these are the actions of tensor fasciae lati. And the nerve supply, it is superior gluteal nerve, which supplies the three muscles, gluteus medius, gluteus minimus, and tensor fasciae lati. Superior gluteal nerve, once again I am telling you, is L4, L5, S1 dorsal division. Okay, so this is the last slide. Identify the muscles their action and nerve supply. So they are all the you check it yourself. Okay, so in this diagram they have shown you the 3 gluteus altogether. 3 gluteus mein you can see the yellow one is the gluteus maximus. Deep below to that is the blue color muscle, that is gluteus medius, and deep to gluteus medius the red one is gluteus minimus. Okay, so layer by layer dissection, if you see, when you remove the superficial and deep fascia, you will find that this gluteus maximus has a wider extent, but it does not covers gluteus medius completely. The upper portion of it, it partially covers gluteus maximus, partially covers the lower half of gluteus medius, but the upper portion of gluteus medius is covered by the gluteal fascia. And the gluteal fascia, remember, in this area where this is gluteus medius, which is not covered by gluteus maximus, in this portion the gluteal fascia is thickened.